challenge parliamentarians to ask the president, could the president come out clear? What are the other underpinning things that we need to know that inform this decision? Because I believe that the peace and stability in South Sudan is in the interest of our country. Looking at the foreign policy that was actually launched under the Jubilee administration, it is economic diplomacy. You know how much investments we have in South Sudan. We know even the flights, the stability. So this is something that we should not leave it as a headline and our troops coming back. Kenyans are owed an explanation as to what are the other intricacies. And if also there were mistakes that were made, I think accountability demonstrates that this be made public. If the general made a mistake, people make mistakes. Even you know the case that happened in Rwanda with the French troops that actually before the massacre happened. I think we don't want to rewrite history. We want to learn from history so that when we continue engaging in peaceful missions moving forward, we do not have such a situation. So, but I understand fully it is a sovereignty message, and Kenya has the right to
for two things, you know. One, there were allegations of corruption, and if that was the case, then Ban Ki-moon is right. Two, Kenya has really assisted the UN in the region in a big way, and for that matter, Kenya should not be taken for granted, even if an individual has done a mistake. Thirdly, you know the international laws, which for every law there is an exception, and there is an exception for Kenya in Somalia and in Southern Sudan. You know, when you border a country under the international conventions, you don't send your troops there. But we had special circumstances which allowed us to create an exception for that rule. Therefore, it is very, very important that we go into the deeper matters. Sovereignty is important, but law is also important. There is more conflict when you take your troops to a bordering country. Especially when there are mistakes, because you are neighbors. But if it is a far country, you know, Kenyan's troops are in so many other countries, and they have done very well. It is also a good thing for our own troops. They get the necessary experience, and they have helped keep peace in the world.
Yeah, but we now see a PS Principal Secretary accusing the UN Secretary General of disrespect, bureaucratic arrogance. Surely this was degenerated.
It is for failure to compromise corruption.
No.
Corruption was not compromised.
You cannot take the allegations. Here is where we go Kenya.
Because the UN said
these things of our politics where we think we are Jubilee and
no.
Here is where we stand with our country, Kenya. First of all, we have been so supportive in all the conflicts that we have had within the East African and the Horn region. Kenya has stood with all of them, regardless of whether UN is there or not UN. And South Sudan knows that we have been their mother, that everything that happens, Kenya carries the baggage of South Sudan just because of men who do not want to run their country in the right way. This is something that started way back. And I'm wishing the UN would have given the general a chance to defend himself. That was way back in July. Then you come in September, the deputy president went for a meeting in the UN. If you are indeed a good partner, you would have called the deputy, briefed the deputy on what is happening in South Sudan, why you have decided to indeed summon the general, but not give him time to defend himself. And then you don't come now and then just sack him, and you expect Kenya will sit and our soldiers are dying because of our brothers of South Sudan, and we here in the country are also straining because we have taken them. You see the way they roam with their big V8s in this country. They forget their country is burning out there. This is the time we stand as Kenya, because I will feel very disappointed when a South Sudan is roaming here, and then our army is the one that is now being blamed by the UN.
I have actually pronounced myself, I think, in last week's forum, and we were with Kimosop. But I think it is quite unfortunate that we can take the allegations of corruption from the UN seriously, just because it is the UN saying, and we don't believe with what the government says because it is not the president of your choice. I think we need to agree that as a commander-in-chief, there is no way. Diplomacy has to be two-way. If there was no problem, we would not be here today. But I don't want to comment because I don't know exactly what lies in beneath. But going forward, I think diplomacy is two-way. The president is a chief ambassador of any country, chief diplomat. The UN is a leader in terms of diplomacy in the world. So this thief has to be really, you cannot blame everything just because you have allegations on someone as a person and say that now you take all the problem. Because the role the Kenyans have played in South Sudan from the birthing of that nation, I think we really cannot need, we don't even need to parade it. But going forward,
I want to ask you a very different question.
Yes. We also must realize that we must treat and protect our territory. We must protect our armed forces, and that is what. And you know, Ambassador Juma is one very calculating woman. She never just has an outburst. For her to speak the way she has spoken, I personally think there is more than meets the eye in the problematic relationship between the UN on this matter.
Okay, when it comes to our elections and our governance, we rarely talk about foreign policy. But when we look at Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency, we're seeing a few things. Disagreement with the ICC for obvious reasons. Now we are seeing a tiff with the UN, pulling troops from South Sudan. We have a problem with Tanzania. Yes. We are seeing a number of countries that border Kenya. Yes,
which diplomatic issue? Which one? Perception.
This is the first time when the Indumuli is being asked to respond.
We want it to be factual.
I'm going to be very factual. Tanzania has refused to sign that EPA agreement that should have ratified a deal with the EU.
Yes.
Well,
that's not
okay. That is not a Kenyan problem. That is not a Kenyan problem.
Of diplomacy and in terms of foreign policy, yes, this isn't this going to form a discussion as we head to the election?
I get you.
I'm not saying it was wrong or right.
It's okay.
But there are
I've had you. Since I'm on the floor, Mr. Speaker, so that is for protection. I think from an analysis perspective, I think I would boldly say I give credit to President Kenyatta in terms of advancing Kenya's as in foreign policy. If you actually look at the number of diplomatic engagements that we've had in Kenya, courtesy of under the Jubilee administration, and the number of engagements that he has projected Kenya's image abroad in a stronger way, more than any other president has done, and has actually led from the front as the first diplomat of the country. And even at the moment, when you look at the way the Jubilee administration is pushing the candidature of Amina Mohamed to be the next chairperson of AU, you can actually say truly they have the Kenya has a foreign policy that is very, very clear. And actually, when you also look at the number of pacts that we've signed in terms of on economics, we might not have the full information to disclose, but you can see a deliberate push to advance economic diplomacy. So I think they have tried. They've done a good job. We have a foreign policy, we also have a diaspora policy, and all that has been done. And I think to a great extent to also congratulate Amina Mohamed. I think of all the people who has really delivered. And I think today, looking at the discussion, the agenda has been really an overarching.
And I can see the senators are just itching to defend the Jubilee administration.
Allow me to finish, Fred, because I was pointing out that on foreign policy, we have to have the courage to actually give somebody credit. So for me, I was finishing on the credit part. I think the other thing that we also need to ask ourselves is there's also been questions around the costs and the amounts of money that the president has used in his trips abroad. I think on an accountability part, one of the things that it is important is the demonstration of how those engagements are directly beneficial. There has been an information gap on how those engagements are translating to impact and results, because at the end of the day, all politics is local. So even as we praise and congratulate him, I think the foreign affairs docket need to also explain to Kenyans how they are translating to results and impacting the lives of Kenyans.
And of course there has been a few successes, but there are questions as well. Now, for the first time, we're having issues with Tanzania. In the case where Kenyan delegation of government officials traveled to Tanzania and was not allowed even to leave the airport. Those are issues that were never there before. This is a neighboring country. We're now seeing an issue with Sudan. Of course, Somalia is a problem. ICC is a problem, surely. I know we rarely discuss foreign policy even in our campaigns, but surely for CORD.
I think foreign policy is very important. What happens, you know, Kenya does not live in isolation. We are now in a global village. And you know, what happens in the region is very important. It is true, and you can see there has been a deliberate effort. We had actually an issue with South Africa, with the visas. And a Kenyan going to South Africa will really be treated bad, involve even a member of parliament, you know. Even trying to get a visa was an issue. So I saw that President Zuma and our own president met. I doubt whether that was really fully resolved, but that's one of the very itchy issues with our international relations. It is true, we have been having some itches with Tanzania. From the time, you know, there were the ICC issues, there were allegations that Tanzania was actually harboring some of the witnesses. And you know, that almost strained our relationship. So I can see now the two presidents met again, and you can see there is an effort to make...
but it took a whole year after Magufuli was elected for him to come to Kenya.
Yes, you can see that there is an effort being made, and I don't think it is yet smooth. You know when you travel is when you realize that you are a Kenyan and you are not wanted in that country. Probably because between the two governments something has not happened. When you travel and you are a member of parliament and you want to access for an official meeting in South Africa, you have serious issues. You have to go to the minister in charge of foreign affairs to begin intervening. That tells us something. So it's good we improve that international relationship. In America, campaign is a very, very key thing. What is your relationship with the rest of the world? And you can see even in the case of Donald Trump, the president-elect now of America, he didn't seem to know much of Africa. You know, Kenya is assisting Americans in really, getting to keep peace in the world. This is the hub. This is the place. This is where a lot of communication takes place, and this is where America is very safe. So you can see relationship.
Now it's I know.
It's not defending. It's not defending. I think in my comment is just simple. It's just simple, and I think the two of them agree actually that something has already been done or is being done, because even after the Magufuli visit, we are already having an structured engagement between the two CSs in the two countries to iron out some of these issues. And I want to say,
you agree they have issues.
The US, look at the US as a superpower. They don't have friends all over. In fact, they have very many enemies. And I think Kenya is a superpower in this region. And I think that we must accept. It is a superpower. So it is okay to have the coalition sometimes. But I think this Jubilee government has made a deliberate effort to iron out some of these things, and I think going forward we can only expect to see better, and we will be able to see our country cementing that position that they occupy today of the leader in the region, because by all means, economically, and I think even some of the issues we have with Tanzania mostly are really just related to the outgoing personality of Kenya and their jobs. They are fearing these Kenyans when they come here, they take over everything. Go to Arusha, even in terms of hospitality, in business, they have taken the lead, and I think those are some of the issues that we are seeing the resistance come from. But I think I take Kimosop's suggestion that just the way we are having the State House Summit on different issues, ICT, youth, corruption, we must have even a summit on foreign policy to explain, because many governments have put pen and paper, and many countries across the world with Kenya to have bilateral correlation in some issues, business and otherwise. But we only see that maybe when we have the tourism summit, you'll see something come up with different countries. But I think the president should actually take that up.
The discussion about foreign policy.
To break it down to Kenyans, so to explain what does it mean.
Make sure you attribute the recommendation.
I know you would want to echo your colleagues'
Not
sentiments.
just echo, I just want to say, as Kenyans, when we look at foreign policy, let us now remember our brothers and sisters that are out there, because that's how it affects them. So when we trivialize it and make it as if it's a political issue, then they lose also, because in the end of the day, whenever that Kenyan is walking into any office abroad, she doesn't go there with her background of this is my tribe, Kenya. That's her passport. So let's protect our passport. I think that's the most important thing. Regardless of what we face back home, protect our passports as we got, so that people can also remember this Kenya where every person has wished to come in the last 3 years. What country is this? Because we have those who ask that outside there. Now, coming to what is happening, and also, I want to thank the President, because for the first time, it's not that these issues were never there. It's our new constitution that is allowing us to also be able get to know all these things. Some of these things have been there, even worse when Kibaki's government was in. That's why he decided, I'm not going to travel. That's why he decided to change his policy to survive, to go to the east. It was very tough, but because you didn't have that liberal debate,
discussion about foreign
even
policy.
to understand foreign affairs.
Which is just point of information. Since you are the majority whip in the Senate, you can see in principle what we have said is that a position taken to advance Kenya's position, all Kenyans we support. What was wrong, for example, in terms of communication to to the members of the public? We say, for example, Kenya is taking this position. We are withdrawing our troops because of the following reasons. And even not only before you give the reasons, you say, by the way, give us a small brief on the history of Kenya on peace engagement, so that you know the way you do communication. These are the number of troops, these are the people, the casualties, these are the budget we are spending, so that we see really that when we say we are not being respected, it's that for me would have actually helped.
And you know, I think the same way, because we have put politics in many of the things. After that statement, I believe how we would have just torn out the same speech. I mean, Kenya. Let us be honest to our people.
Ladies and gentlemen, we need to wrap up our news review, and I need to give you a chance.
Then the best we can request from State House is have a summit for Kenyans to understand foreign policy.
Dan Manzo, final comments.
Yes, I want to say that under international law and even under local law, first of all, nobody should be, should be hard. The person who was our leader in Southern Sudan of the troops should have been given a chance to be heard, whatever the case. Nobody should be condemned and heard anywhere in the world. And I believe by the time it got to the level of Secretary General, there must have been mechanisms, internal mechanisms, to make sure that justice was done. If justice was not done, then Kenya has a reason to take a stand position. But if there was a genuine mistake, then we should apologize for it, but not defend a mistake when it's a mistake. If it is corruption, we should not defend corruption as part of our foreign policy. We should say our people out there should give Kenya a good name, should give Kenya a good image, and should not go and carry away what we do here and go and practice it outside there, because it will not be acceptable, and it will be against the law, and they will face the law. And for that, I think it's a good thing, but generally Kenya has done well. If the officer was condemned and hard, then it is wrong. But I believe there were proper mechanisms before it reached the office of the Secretary General. And the Secretary General should have had a mechanism to consult with the country before an act is taken. So they should have acted together, both Kenya and the Secretary General. Thank you so much, Dan Manzo. Beatrice Elachi, as we head to the weekend, final call.
All I want to say, I want to look at Ondiek, General Ondiek, and I know he has gone through a lot. It's not just what my brother is talking about, corruption. He needs to read the story. What I want to tell South Sudan, indeed, as Kenya, we have stood with them. Regardless what they have done, even when they kill our brothers in Sudan who are doing business with them, and yet we have allowed them to do business in Kenya, we never kill them. I think the President, Kiir, must think very seriously in diplomacy on how you run the different countries, so that in the end Kenyans also will not feel we have walked a journey with you, you are not worthy to be trusted anymore, and therefore now let's leave. South Sudan is going to suffer. It will suffer.
Thank you, Senator.
I think I'll just pick up from where Senator Elachi has stopped, because there are already some flying threats to Kenyans living in southern Sudan. And I think in South Sudan, we need to get this done and wind up this problem in a way that we do not endanger the lives of our Kenyans. And the Kenyans out there are neither CORD nor Jubilee. Kenyans out there are just Kenyans, and they're out there to do business. In fact, there are more Kenyans doing business than there are more Sudanese in Kenya not doing anything meaningful than there are Kenyans who are in Sudan contributing to the economy. And we allow nevertheless, if you go to the area of USA, you'll meet with them everywhere. So I think we have been very magnanimous. They must also look at the situation in their country to make a deliberate effort to stabilize that country. And I think that comes from both the government and the opposition. Going to the weekend, of course, I will speak about the president's plea to politicians. I think we need to put it out here clearly that we need to be very guarded in our campaigns or in our utterances, so that we do not incite violence. I think we've already started seeing some of these things from some areas in Uasin Gishu coming from leaders. I think we must guard our mouths really, so that we do not cause violence or incite violence. We must go to the election in a platform of peace and unity in the country. But I think going forward to the weekend, we'll have a very major meeting at a fundraiser in Gilgil Full Gospel Churches. I will be looking forward to have a conglomeration of leaders there, so that we are able to help in the construction of that church.
Thank you, Senator. Finally, Bwana Vincent Kimosop, wrap it up for us.
Okay, I think we have discussed the issue of foreign policy, and I'm happy out of this conversation that there will be a summit soon. The people who are in this table are able enough to ensure that this happens. And then we have invested much in South Sudan, including the chairperson of WIPA getting an award. I believe we should not lose the focus. It is important for Kenya to continue supporting South Sudan, because when South Sudan prospers, Kenya will prosper and Africa will prosper. And then finally, the whole element of ensuring that we keep people accountable. And I want to say that it is a good week for women. Particularly with the performance of Hillary Clinton. We may not agree on policy issues, we may not agree on certain issues that she was standing for, but I think it is a moment to reflect and to be proud that majority of the Americans really appreciated her competence and celebrated her, not because she's a woman, but because she was first a leader. This is an encouragement to all women who are planning to run, that if they offer themselves, actually Kenyans can celebrate and appreciate them, the way looking at the reaction. So wish Kenyans a good weekend. Indimuli, to thank you for hosting us here.
Always a pleasure.
And,
always a pleasure.
And also wish you a great weekend.
On the weekend, I want to say this weekend, as WIPA, we are headed to Taita, and the journey has already started in Nairobi here, led by the WIPA party leader Kalonzo Musyoka, who now is the African Digital Man of the Year, and you remember his big efforts in Southern Sudan. I hope they are not going to be watered down by this sort of actions and statements.
Okay.
And I hope he's going to take a responsibility also to ensure that South Sudan can come back to its feet.
And can we wish Amina Mohammed then
and I wish Amina Mohammed all the best,
so that she can go on to
sort out
finish this.
Maybe the elections
and
come in
as I
January.
move to Ukambani to send a young man to get a wife there, I hope I will mend all what we are having. That's what I'm doing on the weekend. On Sunday to be at Yembeni Catholic